Since Mum and Dad are going to live here for a while, why don't you rent an apartment somewhere and stay there? Hearing those words from my husband, Kevin, my thoughts froze for a moment. Beside him, my father-in-law and mother-in-law wore faint smiles, utterly devoid of even a trace of apology. I'm sorry, Hilary. It's only until we save up enough to buy a house, my mother-in-law said. Standing in front of my own home, I could do nothing but stare in stunned silence. Half a year earlier, my career as an international management consultant was reaching its very peak. I was appointed project lead for a massive corporate turnaround plan at a Paris-based global fashion conglomerate, one of those dream assignments everyone envies. It was the biggest challenge of my career, requiring months of on-site research across Europe and grueling negotiations. On the morning of my departure, I was filled with hope and a quiet sadness at having to part from the man I loved. I took a peek at your presentation materials last night. They were flawless. That revenue forecast graph was incredibly persuasive. That's my wife. Kevin wrapped an arm around my shoulders and praised me with his usual sweet words. My friends are always saying how lucky I am to have such a brilliant and beautiful wife. Talking about you in front of them is my greatest pride. I'll miss you, but this is for your success. I'm truly proud of you. I drew great emotional strength from his support. As he stood beside my packed suitcase, he seemed to remember something and added casually, "Ah, right, my parents said they wanted to come visit. They were hoping to see you too, but the timing didn't work out before your departure, so they were really disappointed." Well, that's a shame. You'll be lonely by yourself while I'm gone, so please tell them they're welcome any time. I hope they'll stay and relax. I truly meant it. I had no idea those words would mark the beginning of a nightmare. Work in Europe was brutal. At first, Kevin and I video called every night, but as the project entered its most critical phase, our contact gradually dwindled. I told myself he must be busy too, and threw myself completely into my work. 2 months into my assignment, my phone rang late one night. It was my best friend Lucy, back when I had nearly been crushed by pressure and loneliness at work. When even my husband had brushed it off optimistically, Lucy was the only one who noticed something was wrong and listened to me with genuine care. Since then, she has become an irreplaceable emotional anchor in my life. Her voice on the other end of the line was unusually grave. "Hilary, I'm sorry to call you at this hour, but there's something I absolutely have to tell you." "What is it? Did something happen?" "Please stay calm. Kevin's parents have been living in your house ever since the day you left for Europe." My blood ran cold. "That's not all. For about the past month, every weekend your house has basically turned into a neighborhood social club." What she described went far beyond anything I could have imagined. Apparently last weekend was the worst. Until 2 in the morning, blaring 80s rock music echoed through the neighborhood, accompanied by the drunken shouting of partygoers. The next morning, the lawn I had lovingly cared for was littered with pizza boxes, empty beer cans, and cigarette butts. The antique rose garden you always said was your treasure. It's been completely trampled by drunk guests. There's nothing left of it. The leftover trash from their barbecues wasn't even sorted. It's just been left out, attracting crows and reeking horribly. Complaints are pouring in from all over the neighborhood. She also told me that my in-laws were going around shamelessly saying, "This is our son's house, so we can use it however we like." I talked to Kevin so many times, but he just told me I was being too sensitive. Like I was the bad guy. I really hated having to tell you this, but I couldn't stand watching your home be destroyed while you're away anymore. Lucy's words trembled with sadness and anger. As soon as we hung up, I called Kevin. The ringing sounded unbearably long and hollow as it echoed through my hotel room. After several rings, the call finally connected, but instead of the voice of the husband I had been longing to hear, I was met with an irritated, low tone as if he'd picked up an unwanted sales call. Hello, Hillary? I'm busy right now. Kevin, I need to talk to you. Lucy called me. She said the house is in terrible shape. I rushed through everything Lucy had told me, the destroyed yard, the flood of complaints from the neighbors. My voice trembled with anger and anxiety. But on the other end of the line, he was silent. After several seconds, he let out a long, heavy sigh and then said something I couldn't believe. Oh, that? Lucy's exaggerating. Doesn't she stick her nose into other people's business a bit too much? I mean, my parents are just enjoying themselves with a few friends. I've been lonely while you're gone too, you know. Having them around really helps me out. Just enjoying themselves? This is not that kind of situation. He scoffed at my desperate protest. All right, I get it. I've got an important dinner with a client now. I don't want to waste time on something so trivial. We'll talk later. Beep, beep, beep. The call was cut off, unilaterally. I stood there frozen in place, my fingers clenched tightly around my smartphone. The anger passed quickly, replaced by a sensation as if all the strength were draining from my body. After that, I tried calling him again and again, but he never picked up. The line went straight to voicemail every time. I'm begging you, Kevin, please listen to me. I texted him. The message was marked read almost immediately, but no reply ever came. Why? Why would Kevin, the man who used to whisper that he loved me, treat me like this? As my thoughts spiraled in confusion, one explanation surfaced. It's not his decision, it has to be his parents. They must have poisoned his mind, speaking badly about me, manipulating him behind the scenes. Otherwise, there was no way to explain how the gentle, loving man I knew could behave like this. The next day, I couldn't put my phone down even while working. I kept waiting for a message from Kevin, but the merciless silence finally made me understand. This was his clear rejection. Whether he was being controlled or had chosen to betray me himself, I didn't know, but I no longer had the luxury of waiting. After work, I called my trusted supervisor. There's been a family emergency. I'm very sorry, but I need to return to the US immediately. Sensing the gravity in my voice, he replied without hesitation. I can tell just from hearing you that this isn't something minor. You can explain the details later. Don't worry about the project. I'll handle the team and give them proper instructions. Focus on yourself and get ready to go home right away. Back in my hotel room, I stuffed my belongings into my suitcase like a madwoman. I boarded the earliest flight I could arrange that very night and headed back home. In the taxi to the airport, my mind grew eerily calm as I began preparing for the worst. I took out my phone and made an international call to the lawyer who had previously helped me with the property contract for my house. I briefly explained the situation and asked him to prepare a certified copy of the deed. I would stop by his office the next day. He immediately grasped the seriousness of the situation. Understood. I'll have everything ready, he said. The following afternoon, after landing at my local airport, the first place I went was not my home, but the lawyer's office downtown. After receiving the clear folder containing the prepared documents, I got straight into a taxi and headed toward the house I knew so well. When I stepped out of the taxi, the sight before me made my heart sink. The garden was mercilessly trampled, and ugly stains marred the fence. Everything Lucy had told me was true. Taking a deep breath, I inserted my key into the front door. It wouldn't go in. No matter how many times I tried, all I felt was the cold, unyielding resistance of metal hitting metal. That was when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Hillary, you're back already. I turned around to see Kevin standing there with his parents, grocery bags hanging from both hands. There was no surprise on Kevin's face, no guilt, just a cold expression as if an inconvenience had returned. Why has the lock been changed? My voice was so weak and trembling that it surprised even me. Oh, I changed it. Mum and Dad are going to be living here for a while, Kevin replied casually. My mind went blank. For a while? What do you mean by that? He frowned in obvious annoyance. Exactly what it sounds like. It'll take time for them to save up enough money to buy a new house. Until then, they'll live here. So you can rent an apartment and stay there for now. Simple, right? An apartment. I was speechless, unable to believe what I was hearing. At that moment, my mother-in-law cut in, wearing a pitying yet unmistakably condescending smile. I'm sorry, Hilary, but a successful career woman like you should have no trouble finding an apartment or two, right? You're not like us old people after all. My father-in-law muttered in agreement. That's right, and you earn way more than we do anyway. Rent shouldn't even make a dent for you. Their words looked down on me, mocking my efforts and my success. I heard something snap inside my head. Blood seemed to rush backward through my body, my vision burning red with rage. The urge to scream every insult I could think of straight into their faces surged through me, but I swallowed it down, clenching my back teeth as hard as I could. If I lost control, I would only be dismissed as a hysterical wife. There was only one way to remove these foolish, brazen three, effectively and legally. Lowering my head, I spoke in a thin voice as if admitting defeat. All right, I'll do as you say. The moment those words left my mouth, the three of them turned their backs on me with triumphant expressions. Finally, she gets it, that was easy, and swaggered toward my front door as if it already belonged to them. I was waiting for that exact moment. The instant they stepped into the entryway. Quietly, I slipped my smartphone out of my coat pocket. The cold, smooth surface of the screen felt as though it were cooling the flames of rage burning inside me. In a calm, steady voice, I said, Yes, police, my home is being illegally occupied. My mother-in-law heard me. Just as she was about to step fully inside, she froze mid-motion. Then she spun around and shrieked hysterically. Wait a minute! Startled, Kevin and my father-in-law turned around as well. Hilary, what are you talking about? Who are you calling? Kevin rushed toward me. I didn't budge an inch. Speaking calmly into the phone, I continued, Yes, the address is... I completely ignored him and clearly gave the operator my home address. In that instant, the colour drained from Kevin's face. My mother-in-law let out a piercing scream. You wouldn't dare! Are you calling the police? What do you think you're doing? She lunged toward me, but my father-in-law hurriedly grabbed her arm and held her back. Hilary, stop it! Hang up the phone right now! Kevin snarled as he closed in on me, his voice low and animalistic. He reached out to snatch my phone. I took a single step back and calmly dodged his arm. Operator, can you hear me? One of the perpetrators, my husband, is currently threatening me and attempting to interfere with this report. He is being extremely aggressive. Please send assistance immediately. That one calm sentence was the final blow. Kevin froze where he stood, as if turned to ice. On the other end of the line, I heard the operator say, Understood. Officers are being dispatched immediately. Please ensure your own safety. Thank you, I replied and ended the call. Are you insane, Hilary? Are you trying to destroy our relationship, our family? Kevin shouted, his face twisted with rage. Family! You, the man who tried to throw me out of my own home and told me to rent an apartment, have the nerve to say that. The ones who aren't sane here are you. I told him clearly. Call them back and cancel it. Now! He yelled, his face contorted with fury. Are you really going to ruin our lives? Our marriage? It's too late. The report has been officially filed. This is no longer a personal matter. It's a legal one. I let his rage wash over me without flinching. At that point, my mother-in-law, who had been panicking moments before, approached me with a tearful expression. Hilary, please, think about this. Kevin is just upset right now, that's all. We're family, aren't we? If this turns into a police matter, We won't be able to show our faces in society. That's right, my father-in-law added in a sympathetic tone. Let's all go inside and talk calmly. We admit we may have gone too far with the lock, so if the police arrive, we can just say it was a simple marital argument. On the surface, their words sounded conciliatory, but in truth, they were nothing more than a demand that I lie, for their own self-preservation. Despite their claims of regret, what I saw in their eyes was pure fear. Fear that their plan was collapsing. In the end, they were still firmly on their son's side. The discussion is over, I said, staring straight at all three of them. It ended the moment you tried to drive me out of my own home. And what you're asking for now isn't reconciliation. You're just trying to use me to erase your crimes. All three fell silent. That was when it happened. From the distance, the faint wail of sirens broke through the heavy silence between us. As the sound grew louder, the red fury drained from Kevin's face, and my in-laws turned a sickly shade of pale. 2 police cars pulled up in front of the house. 4 officers, 2 from each car, stepped out. Leading them was an older officer, calm and composed, clearly a seasoned veteran. "Which one of you called the police?" the older officer asked. I stepped forward. "I did." Immediately, Kevin erupted. "Listen, this is just a marital dispute. My wife just came back from a long business trip and is a bit emotional. I changed the locks because I heard there have been burglaries in this area recently. I was only trying to protect the house." His mother quickly jumped in with tears, attempting the same tactic. "Yes, officer, we were only trying to help while our son was away." Their transparent lies and performances barely stirred any emotion in me anymore. I quietly waited for their charade to end, then addressed the older officer. "There's a document I'd like you to verify." I pulled a clear folder from my bag and handed the certified copy of the deed to the officer. He carefully traced the owner's name with his finger. A younger officer peered over his shoulder. After a few moments of silence, the older officer lifted his eyes from the deed and fixed them squarely on Kevin. His gaze had changed. Not the look of someone mediating a marital argument, but the steely focus of a law enforcement officer confronting a suspect. "Sir, according to this document, Hillary is the rightful owner of this property. By changing the locks without her permission and preventing the owner from entering, you and these individuals are committing illegal occupation. This is a clear criminal act." "No, that's ridiculous," Kevin shouted. "She agreed. She said we could live here." "No," I said firmly. "The only permission I granted was for you to occasionally visit while I was away. I never consented to you living here for months or turning my home into a party venue." The officer nodded, then exchanged a glance with the younger officer, who produced a pair of handcuffs. At the metallic sound, Kevin's mother let out a short, sharp squeal. "You 3 are under arrest for trespassing." Kevin's face burned red with anger and humiliation. He struggled briefly, but the strong officers easily restrained him and snapped the cuffs shut. "Remember this, Hillary." He spat, his final words sounding pitiful rather than threatening. My father-in-law offered no resistance, simply hanging his head in defeat. My mother-in-law screamed, "This is unforgivable," as officers escorted her to the back of the patrol car. I simply watched, silently, as it all unfolded. Relief, vindication, and a faint emptiness washed over me simultaneously. From the neighboring house, Lucy opened the door and rushed over, worry etched on her face. She hugged me gently. Supported by her, I crossed the threshold of my home for the first time in months. But the interior was no longer the home I knew. The living room walls had been repainted a cheap, unfamiliar beige. My beloved sofa was shoved into a corner, replaced by a massive, tasteless leather recliner. The carpet was stained in countless places, and the air was thick with the stale smell of beer mixed with the residue of someone else's living. That night, I stayed at Lucy's house and immediately called a 24-hour locksmith, scheduling them to arrive first thing in the morning. The next day, clutching a new set of keys, I went straight to the city's most reputable law firm. I was introduced to an attorney named Steve Anderson, a man with sharp eyes. He listened silently as I laid out the story, occasionally taking notes. I placed all my meticulously prepared evidence on the table. A chronological account of events, a copy of the deed, sworn statements from neighbours including Lucy, and the record of my final phone call with Kevin. For the first time, admiration appeared in his eyes. "Hilary," he said, "you've collected evidence with remarkable calm and precision. Most victims are consumed by anger and grief and cannot think clearly, but you are different. You instinctively understand that facts are your strongest weapon. With this evidence, there is nothing that can make us lose. I can say that with certainty." His confident words brought a small measure of relief. Together we immediately devised a plan. We would pursue both divorce proceedings and a civil lawsuit for unlawful occupation and emotional damages simultaneously, the most aggressive approach possible. As expected, after being released on bail, Kevin's side hired attorneys. In the first exchange of written statements, they shamelessly claimed Hilary verbally agreed to a long-term stay. The lock change was purely for security. There was no intent to bar her entry. The parties were just casual gatherings to interact with neighbours, entirely reasonable. Each line I read stoked the flames of my anger. Weeks later, we faced each other in court again. Kevin and his parents looked more haggard than the last time I'd seen them, but the fire in their eyes was not remorse. It was bitter resentment and hatred toward me. When the trial began, the first to testify was Lucy. She calmly and methodically recounted the chaos caused by the parties and how she repeatedly asked Kevin to stop, only to be arrogantly ignored. Next, the other neighbours also testified one after another about the garbage issues, parking problems, and invasions of privacy, completely dismantling Kevin's claim that everything had been within reasonable bounds almost immediately. Then, Attorney Anderson projected on a large monitor the call records showing my repeated attempts to contact Kevin and screenshots of messages that had been read but ignored. Defendant Kevin deliberately ignored his wife's desperate pleas. This demonstrates a complete abandonment of communication within the marriage and is proof of malicious intent. The decisive blow came with the bank statements I submitted from when I purchased the house. From the down payment to the mortgage repayments, it was clear to everyone that the entire funding came from my personal savings from before marriage. It was proven that Kevin had not contributed a single cent to the purchase of this house. Kevin's lawyer, grasping at straws, argued that married couples are one entity and property should be shared, but Attorney Anderson coldly dismissed this. Which mouth speaks these words when the very person who should be your equal partner was kicked out of her own house and told to rent an apartment? As the courtroom erupted in stifled laughter, Kevin finally took the witness stand. On the witness stand, he wore a face I didn't recognize, a man I had never known. He spoke smoothly of entirely fabricated facts, claiming I was mentally unstable and had a spending problem. At that moment, I understood everything. Ah, I see now. All his love had been a lie. That gentle gaze, those warm embraces, the promises of a future, all of it had been a grand performance prepared for this very day. Before anger even had a chance to rise, a deep, inescapable emptiness spread through me. After his false testimony, Attorney Anderson's skillful cross-examination began, and gradually the facade began to crumble. Were you jealous because Hillary earns more than you? Did you boast about her house to your friends as if it were proof of your own success? Hit squarely by the truth, Kevin finally lost his temper. As a wife, isn't it her duty to support her husband's family? What's wrong with my parents taking a little break? She earns enough money. It's her duty as a wife to tolerate that. At that moment, Kevin dug his own grave. His words revealed, in front of everyone in the courtroom, that he saw his wife not as an equal partner, but merely as a tool to satisfy his desires. The judge regarded him with a look that was neither contempt nor pity, and quietly struck the gavel. Hearing that sound, I quietly felt certain of my victory in this battle. On the day of the ruling, I was alone in the courtroom. Attorney Anderson was beside me, but I had only told Lucy, "I'll call you when it's over." This was my final ritual to put things in order with my own hands. The solemn voice of the judge echoed through the silent courtroom. "I will now deliver the verdict." I straightened my back and looked straight ahead. First, this court accepts the divorce petition filed by plaintiff Hillary and permits legal proceedings for divorce under the conditions to be determined hereafter. The judge briefly cast a sharp glance at Kevin in the defendant's seat before reading the core of the ruling. Next, regarding the disputed property. Based on the submitted evidence, it is fully recognized that the property was purchased by plaintiff Hillary with personal assets accumulated prior to marriage. Therefore, it is not subject to division, and ownership remains entirely with plaintiff Hillary. My castle was legally and completely protected. I could feel my heartbeat strong and powerful. The ruling continued. Defendant Kevin is ordered to pay plaintiff Hillary as follows. First, $28,000 for physical damages caused by unlawful occupation, including the cost of changing locks, thorough cleaning of the entire house by professionals, and repairs to the damaged garden. Second, $150,000 in compensation for severe emotional distress caused by the defendant's malicious actions. The total payment is $178,000. The defendant's actions not only fundamentally betrayed trust in the marriage, but also severely violated the property rights and dignity of an individual, and must be condemned as extremely self-centered. $178,000. More than the amount, I was deeply and quietly satisfied that the judge publicly condemned their actions as malicious and self-centered, and formally acknowledged the suffering I had endured. As the court was adjourned and people began moving about, I finally looked at the defendant's seat. Kevin sat dazed as if his soul had left his body, and his parents covered their faces and wept. I knew their tears were not born of remorse. A few weeks later, I received a call from Attorney Anderson with administrative details. After the discussion about the compensation payment, he prefaced a small aside and informed me of their current situation. Due to their arrest for unlawful entry and the ensuing legal proceedings, Kevin's social credibility was completely destroyed, and he had naturally lost his job. The burden of paying the large compensation fell heavily upon him, and even the few friends who had helped cover his bail had abandoned him. Their lives in a cheap apartment had become hell, and they spent every day shouting at each other, "It's your fault." This was the inevitable result they had brought upon themselves. Legally, the divorce would still take some time due to the state-mandated waiting period. However, for me, my new life began without waiting for such formalities, starting with remodeling my house. This was not mere renovation, but a way to erase all unpleasant traces left by Kevin and to decisively close the past. I repainted the walls in my favorite colors, placed the furniture I had always wanted, and planted beautiful roses in the garden. In this way, my sanctuary was truly reborn, and I regained a peaceful daily life where I could laugh with my closest friend. The words love and family can sometimes be used as a license to bind and hurt people. What truly matters is not bending oneself to someone else's values, but protecting one's own rights and dignity above all else with one's own hands. And a presence like Lucy, who stands by your pain and rejoices in your victory, even without blood ties, is what a true family really is.